Hello, everybody. So I've logged on just a moment or so early, just to hopefully wait for some of you guys to appear. I see that people are starting to appear. Do say hi in the comments below if you are here, and let me know that you are here and that you are listening. As I said, we're going to leave it a couple of minutes, just hopefully for a couple more people to come along. We did say we'd start at 5. But do let me know. Do let me know that you are listening, and hopefully we will start in a couple of minutes, and hopefully this is going to be very helpful for you. I hope so. So if you see me look over to the side, it's just because I've got another screen. I'm just watching you guys watching me, and just seeing if I can see any of your comments. So do drop them below and let me know that you are here. Perfect. All right. So I'm just going to start to set up. I've got a slideshow for you this evening, and yeah, and then once everybody is in, then we'll be ready to go. It should be hopefully an informative time. So let me just set this up, and then we'll be good to go. All right. So I am going to share my screen. I'm going to share that. I'm going to share that. There it is. Perfect. And hopefully, here we are. Present that in. There we are. You should all see just that little covering page. Explains a little bit about me, about who I am, and yeah, that's us. We should be ready to go. Perfect. So as I said, I'm just going to leave it a couple of moments. Hi guys, I can see people who are starting to say hi in the comments. Do let me know that you're here and that you are listening. Perfect. Hi Juliet. Hi Saba. Hi Shabana. All right. Perfect. Brill. And of course, I am. This is also going to be on the live on the group later. The lives should just convert to videos. I'm just going to record it just in case we need it. So let's record as well. There we are. And then it is always there just in case. Hopefully we won't lose it. But you can never tell. Sometimes with the technology, it just gets a little lost. Whoops. There we are. Perfect. Hi guys. Hey, I can see lots of people on the thread. That's really nice. Hi. Hi. Perfect. So a lot of you found us. Brilliant. And we should be ready to start. So obviously, if you have any questions, do just drop them down in that thread. I'm hoping to answer some of the more common ones this evening. But what I will do is once I've finished, I will be going back through all of your questions. So if you have asked something and I haven't answered it on the live, I will take a look down in the thread. I know that Saba will be looking there as well. We've got a couple of other admins, I think, who are jumping on throughout the evening. And if you have asked something down there that I am able to answer, then I will obviously come back after we've done this live and give it an answer. As I said, I've got this other screen, so I am looking at people who are asking questions as well. If it's really, really specific, I might not be able to answer it this evening because it might be really specific to do with the school, and I don't know every single school, but I can go back and I can ask the people who do, and someone will be along and will be able to help. So I think we are probably, yeah, I reckon we're probably about ready to start. So hi guys. So who am I? I think probably a lot of you have seen me on the group. I'm a full-time tutor. I qualified a couple of years ago as a secondary science teacher, I'm an Oxford grad. I've been there 3 times, and I now run something called the Education Hotel. We're based in Oxfordshire. We've got a hub in Northwest London, and we're online. But the most important thing is I'm one of the admins here on the 11 Plus journey, and Saba has really kindly invited me to come on this evening and share some tips with you guys who are just starting out in 11 Plus, because I know that we have a lot of new members. So a lot of you who are just starting out on that journey. We've obviously got some people who are just leaving us on that journey, but hopefully to help anyone who has got those initial questions. So you might know that I do the wow words on Monday in the 11 Plus journey, but we're also there answering your questions in the comments as well. And yeah, so thank you for Saba for letting me on this evening, and hopefully I can help you guys out. So as I said, a lot of you might know me as one of the admins, but what you might not know is that that I sat the 11 Plus myself, and that is me. That is me, age 10. I dug that out from the archives this afternoon, and I sat for CCHS, which is in Essex, and did follow the CSSE exam board. I seem to remember at that time. I was the first person in my family, and actually the only one in my family, to go to grammar school. And I was at a prep school, but my parents really had no idea what the 11 Plus was. And so it wasn't in the time where Facebook was available. It wasn't in the time when forums are available. So my parents relied on school gate gossip, people who'd been to the grammar school, who'd come from our school, and a couple of knowledge of kind of a group of tutors. So there was a tutoring group for 11 Plus that was near me, which I went to, and that's really where we got our knowledge from. So for me to be able to come in to 11 Plus journey and to speak to you guys this evening kind of shows how far we've come, and I'm really happy to be here and to be offering this advice, given that 10-year-old me had absolutely no clue when I was looking through it, and neither did my parents. So it's changed a little bit, and now we've got great groups like the 11 Plus journey, which is full of people who are able to help you out, and that is really great. So I thought I'd start with a little bit of backstory, just to give you an idea as to I've been through it. My parents went through it, and we came out the other side, and I did get a place at CCHS, and it was from there that I went on to Oxford. So you might be right at the start of your journey, and if you are, you may well be asking yourself this: so what is the 11 Plus, and can my child take it? And a lot of us get really, really involved in 11 Plus, especially in the 11 Plus journey. And we don't think about the fact that actually there's many places in the country where you can't sit the 11 Plus. It is actually only for very, very specific counties. And the grammar schools are only within those counties. So if you're looking at this map and you're thinking, my county is not highlighted in red, do check your schools that you're applying to, because it's not every school, not every area that can be applied. So it typically takes place in year 6. It's usually September, October. Obviously it's been delayed a little bit if you've been in the 11 Plus journey and you've been seeing lots of posts about exams recently happening. It was just delayed because of the coronavirus. Typically 11 Plus is an English, math, verbal reasoning, or non-verbal, but as I'll go on to later, some of the schools may choose to only do, say, math and English as opposed to the verbal and non-verbal. If your child is at state primary, it is not prepared for. So they will not prepare your child for it. If they are at a prep school, they may generally prepare, but usually they're looking to prepare for the 11 Plus independence. Often the feeders, if they're feeder schools to certain senior schools, it's those schools they're preparing for, not necessarily the grammar exams. So as I mentioned, I went to a really small prep school, and we prepared, but for the school that it was a feeder for, not for the grammar. And actually a large amount of us took the grammar in the end, but most people went on to the independent route, and not many people went on to the grammar. So a little bit different in terms of if you're in prep. You will do a bit of that preparation, but maybe not quite the grammar school prep. So do be aware that that it is something you prepare for yourself. It is a self-prepared test. If you're at state, you won't see it at all. If you're at grammar, you might see it a little bit, but it is prepared for at home. There's a lot of words that come up. Catchment, sibling policy, super selective, second round, and again, these are things that you may well see across the 11+ journey. Often we type these things in, and I thought it might be really useful just to tell you a little bit about what they actually mean. So admissions rules for each school are different. So this is the reason when some of you ask about specific schools, we will go away and we'll look at them if we're tutors. And often if we've taught for that school, even if I have prepared students that year for that school, I will still go back to the school and I will still check, because actually their admission rules change really regularly. So the first thing, if you are a parent and you have not looked at the admissions criteria on the school's website, please do before you do anything else. So catchment is often a determining factor. That is where you live, and it often depends when as well. So there are many people who look to move across that year. Some schools you have to have been in catchment for a certain number of months. Some schools it's not important. It's about being in catchment when you take the test. It really depends on the school. So before applying to a certain school, please check the catchment. So, for example, this year I've had some parents who phoned me up for advice. They say my child has scored really well in the 11+, but we're not in catchment, and that means that we are unable to get a place within that school. And I didn't realise that before I made them do the 11+, and unfortunately I can't help at that point, because the school has a catchment rule, and that is their rule that they stick to. So please, please, please check the catchment. Some schools have a sibling policy. So if there is already a sibling there, they may lower the score that is needed for 11+. It really depends on the school. Some schools are what we call super selective. So a super selective school often may not have a catchment area, but it does mean that the child needs to perform really, really well in the 11+, often above 95% to gain that place. So that is what we mean when we say super selective. And then second round, some schools have a second round test. So whilst you might sit the standard 11+ for the first round, your second round is they make a first cut. Those who pass the first round are then invited to sit that second round. And those second round exams are maybe a little bit more detailed. They might also involve an interview, a group task, something that is a little bit different. So if you've heard of those in the group, then hopefully that explains a little bit about what we're talking about. This is something that we often get asked, the difference between the different exam boards. So CEM, GL, CSSE are your three main exam boards, and they cover very much similar stuff, but not always the same. So CEM is verbal, non-verbal, and then something called numerical reasoning. The numerical reasoning is very similar to math. The verbal is very similar to English, but they call them different things. And so usually you get two papers. So you do an English verbal reasoning paper and kind of a math non-verbal, but they would call them a verbal and a non-verbal and reasoning. So they are called slightly different things. They all pretty much cover math, English, verbal, non-verbal, but as you can see, the CEM calls it numerical reasoning, for example. Also, the style of questions sometimes change. So it's something that as you go through the preparation, and I'll talk about how to prepare for year 3, 4, 5 going through. But what I recommend to my students is that we start very broad. We start with foundations, we start with what you do in school, and then as you get nearer to the exam, we narrow and narrow until we are doing that exact style of question that each of the exam boards does. CSSE is quite rare, so it's only about 10 schools. It's a math and an English. It's sat in the school where your parents have nominated, so what you guys have nominated. It's the one that has the extra reading time. So often this comes up on the group about if you should be using the reading time to do reading of questions, or if that is mentioned, it's often about CSSE. So CSSE is really specific about those extra minutes of reading time. They have an English, they have a math. GL is all four. It can sometimes be written, it can sometimes be multiple choice. And even within that, there are then some school specifics. So some schools will look at GL, but will look more at the math and the English than they'll look at the verbal, non-verbal. Some schools will only do some of the exams. So it's really, really worth, and I know that this is something that Sab has just written in the comments as well. Please check the school. The individual school will have the absolute answer. Ring them up if you have to and ask them what board are they doing, what exams are they doing, and make sure you know it before you start. Format of the exams also differs. So GL, dependent on the region, is either standard format, which is an answer, written answer, or multiple choice. And multiple choice is written in an answer booklet. It takes its questions from something called the GL Assessment Question Bank, which means that GL questions are very similar in style. They are something that you can obviously tell is GL. So if you do a lot of practice towards the end of year 5, when you're looking at exam specific stuff, and you are doing a lot of GL practice, then you will start to see that the styling of the question is the same. CEM is a little bit more mixed, as we said. It's got that English and verbal reasoning together, and the maths and non-verbal, or the numerical reasoning. And the kind of question style is either standard or multiple choice. And then CEM, it's often very rushed. So there's often more questions there than in the time that is allocated. But as I said, do go back to the question because it can look for year to year. Someone has previously asked about grammar versus independent, and so I thought I'd pop this bit in here. Whilst 11 plus is the major entry point for grammar, it is for some independents, but for some independents, their main entrance is 13 plus. So occasionally we do get people who are looking for 11 plus independent school. And usually what they're looking for at that point is the school's own 11 plus. So school's own 11 plus, they'll set their own version. It's usually a longer comprehension answer. It is usually word-based problems for math, and there's often a creative writing. There's also usually an interview or a group task, which holds a little bit more sway. There is something called the ISEB 11 plus. It's quite rare, it's growing. It used to only be a handful of girls' schools, but I have spoken to some other schools this year, some independents who are looking at using the ISEB 11 plus going forwards. So that is set to possibly change over the next couple of years. And then you will also sometimes hear about the ISEB pre-test. Now, the pre-test is used by boys' schools usually, where they are going to make their decision at 13 plus, but it's a pre-selection. So it is an online test that is taken in math, verbal reasoning, English, and non-verbal reasoning. It's a multiple choice online test. So those are all of the different exam boards. And we, as I said, when we recommend, what we say is that when you start your preparation on foundationary stuff, and then start to specialize into exam specific stuff as you go through. So, oh yeah, just this one, I wanted to put in SET. If you are looking at those schools, then that is the SET. It doesn't technically fall under 11 plus, but it is an 11 plus. So if those are your schools, that is your stuff. Okay, so the most common question that people get asked, or we get asked on this on 11 plus journey, is about preparation. Now, preparation starts early in your child's time. So some people say year 3 is too early. Some people say year 3 is ideal. I kind of sit in the middle. in that I think that year 3 is great for foundation learning. It's great for building a love of learning. It's a great for showing values, but I wouldn't start to look at anything that is 11 plus specific at that point. I do lots of reading, and the Education Hotel has reading lists that we give out to our students for year 3. We look at doing fun projects, so learning projects with them, where we kind of theme the learning and we stretch their knowledge beyond what they're doing at school, but we also make sure that, for example, the operations, use of operations, pluses, minuses, timesing, divide, those are really, really core and really strong. We work on spelling. We'd look at fun writing, so writing a story about your friend, or telling a story, indeed, using something they call Rory story cubes. So they help with actions or a place where you might imagine a story to be. So at this point for year 3, for us, it's about setting that foundation. So really showing your child that you value hard work, that you have an interest in their schoolwork, giving them lots of praise, helping them with those foundation relearning parts. So for math, that's looking at the key operations, that is looking at spelling, that's looking at reading, and really reading in depth and reading with your child. So year 3 preparation is all about foundations, not specific to the exam, but still maintaining that work ethic is really important to build. When we look at year 4, we'd still look at foundation work and start looking at whether they've met those age appropriate milestones. So the government releases a Key Stage 2 national curriculum. We release like a checklist, which is about what they should know at each year. At this point, we would also consider starting a vocab book. A vocab book is a really nice way for a student to, when they're reading a book, if they're reading a school book or if they're reading at home, if they find a word that they're not so certain of, they can write it down in that vocab book and look it up later. And that's part of helping them to increase their vocab and helping them to use that in sentences. They might go back and they might write some stories that involve it, or they might tell some stories that involve it. At this point in year 4, I would focus on math and on English. And if there is nonverbal or verbal, it's for fun. It's not something that you are really focusing on, because there's still year 5 to really focus on that. And I would probably be working in a session of 11 plus foundation a week. And it's not because it's needed to build them, because it's needed to get them used to sitting down and to doing that work. And if they're struggling to do that, that's something that you need to work with them. A lot of students at this point really struggle to sit down and struggle to go through that area and to focus for just 30 minutes. So helping them to be able to do that is really useful. At this age, please don't use past papers, because if you start your child in year 4 on past papers and then you do it for year 5, by the time they're coming to year 6, it's really been a lot, and it often leads to demotivation or burnout if you use them too early. I also personally wouldn't time work. I would say to them, they've got this amount of time, but I wouldn't be sitting there with a stopwatch and seeing how many questions they can do in a minute, unless they are really, really competitive and they're asking for you to do that. I wouldn't put that pressure on at year 4. I also wouldn't at this point worry about the specific focus. As I said, it's something we start preparation early, but we make it a lot more generic at the start. And then when we start to hit end of year 4, start of year 5, we really start to look at what we're specifically focusing on in terms of question style. So obviously, if you are taking an exam where there is no verbal or there is no non-verbal, then no point doing it, even if you're doing it, well, if you're doing it for fun, why not? But But I wouldn't start to worry about, I'm doing this book in year 4. Is it important that it has to be CEM or CSSE? I'd really work on the foundation, on the knowledge, on making sure that your child really knows about time, making sure that your child really understands about how to do division, or that they are reading and they are applying inference, than worrying about the specific style of exam. I would start to think about that when we start kind of year 5 and we start looking at something that's a little bit more focused. So year 3, we're starting very general. Year 4, we're starting to increase a little bit of what we're doing. And then as we get into year 5, end of year 4, start of year 5, that's the point for us where it's important to kind of kick that 11 plus preparation up a notch. And at that point, what we do with students and what we recommend for parents to do as well is to sit down and to have a motivation talk. Really sit down and impress upon your child that and discuss about why they might want to do this. If there is going to be some kind of reward, and that could be based on work that they do per week, it could be a weekly thing, it could be something that that is going to happen after the 11 plus exams, but they're a bit far ahead. Really, what we would do is we'd kind of do small stuff, and it should be linked to effort, not to scores, but on effort. So if they are working really hard, then there is something that has been agreed between you guys. Again, now is the time to start verbal and non-verbal, end of year 4, start of year 5. And have a reality check on it as well. So 11 plus for many people is a marathon, not a sprint. You would have been thinking about it from year 4, possibly. You may have thought about it from year 3. You've been working on basics, you've been looking at foundations, but now is the time where you and your child are going to have to put commitment in. And there will be days, and I know that Sheena's been live on 11 plus journey before, and she said that there have been days when she felt like giving up when she was trying to go through this process, and there will be times when your child will feel like giving up as well. And you need to both have that commitment. So do think very hard about whether that is something you want to put them through. It's going to be a long amount of preparation. Now, some people say, you know what, it's not something we want to put a lot of emphasis on. And so what we're going to do is we are going to take this in a very relaxed way. Other people, it's something that they want to dedicate a lot of time to, and make sure that both you and your child are on the same page. Consider open days if you can, and give your child an idea of what they're aiming for. Many children that we see will only see the school at the end of year 5, and that's actually quite late, because they may not know what they're aiming for, and they've had to work through year 5 in order to with no real goal. So do consider if you can fit open days into the end of year 4, and if it is possible to do that, then do please go and show them what it's like, and show them really why you would like them to go there, and hopefully they buy into the idea, because it's much easier if they do. I'd start looking at 11 plus specific books, so ones that are specific to CEM, and ones that are specific to whatever your exam board is. This is the point where a lot of people start looking at tutors. Some people will look beforehand, but most people will then try and kind of focus a little bit on it when it gets to end of year 4, start of year 5. Do look ahead and see if you are going to do mock exams that are specific for your exam boards, when they are. So this is the point we start looking at really what does the whole year look like. And I've put here, plan the year of year 5. So make sure that your child knows what's going to happen. So they know that that you are going to do mocks or practice papers in this specific part of the year. They know that by this point they should be looking at timed papers, and this is what you're aiming for. and start to consider, this is where the exam technique starts coming in, this is where the timing starts coming in, this is where really really detailed feedback, and really you start to see, when you start looking at it, you start to see that you make smaller and smaller increases the further it gets into year 5, because you are starting to really hone those skills. So I can see that Saba's written in the comments, yeah, year 5 is when to get structured. Start having a timetable, start timing it, start doing those past papers. I wouldn't do past papers personally until January, until, well, actually maybe even February, March time, but I would start doing parts of past papers. So maybe start taking questions out and start giving them 5 questions to start with. But this is the point where we start funneling in, and we start funneling into practice. If you know that there's a second stage, if you know that there are interviews, and you are aiming for a school that has a second stage in it, then do try and work a little bit of this into your practice. And the reason I say this is the time of year when a lot of schools start releasing who goes through to second stage. And what we find is, if a child has spent a really long time preparing for stage 1, and actually they may not understand that there is a stage 2, they've done that stage 1, and for them that is it, that's the end, and they've not thought about the fact there's a stage 2. And often parents have prepared them to do that multiple choice style question, and then second stage hits, they get the invite back, and a couple of things happen. Either the child doesn't want to do it, because as far as they were concerned, stage 1 was the end and that was it, and now you're asking them to do more work and they weren't communicated with properly, or they haven't ever had the opportunity to do that style of question. And so actually it becomes quite hard to do a more detailed comprehension answer. So that's an answer that's like a 3-mark answer that they have to write in sentences. And actually they've only been used to doing multiple choice. That's quite a different style. Or they are used to doing multiple choice math, where there's 5 answers to choose from, you can eliminate, and suddenly there's no answers and it's multiple steps. So that, if that is something that you know that you are looking at, look ahead and make sure that your child is aware and is prepared to move on to that second stage, so it doesn't come at such a shock. So this is really where we get the planner out, get the year out, and start to think about, okay, this is the time I'm having the mock exams. Indeed, think about, this is maybe the time we're going to have holiday. Because if you're looking at year 5, you know the exams are in September of year 6, you want to be thinking, okay, when are we going to have a family holiday? Are we going to take time off this year? What are we going to be doing with that time? And really do try and sit down with your child. It's obviously a long time in advance for them, but do make sure that they have understood what is happening, because the biggest pushback that you'll get from your child will be when they've not understood what's going to happen. So if they thought that summer holidays was going to be completely off, because it was last year and it has been the year before, and then suddenly you get to summer holidays and you say to them, no, this is what we're doing, this is the timetable that we've written, they will push back because it's not what they were expecting. So do make sure that that is communicated with them. So hopefully that has explained a little bit about the funnel that I suppose that I sometimes talk about. So that year 3, really broad, really foundations, all that love of learning stuff. Make sure that they appreciate that really you value their work and you value what they're doing in school. And then as you go through to year 4, you start to become a little bit more focused on the English and the math, and you start to introduce a little bit of extra work, sit down and focus, and you start to narrow it down a little bit, but maybe not. Don't look at the specifics of the kind of exam boards. And then as we start to go into year 5, we narrow even more, and then we start to look at stuff that is a little bit more specific, and we plan out the rest of the year so that our children are aware of what is coming next. Okay, so Farina, I hope I've said that right. Are second round tests common for schools? For super selectives, yes. So many super selectives will do a stage 1 and a stage 2. Something like Henrietta Barnett does a stage 1 and stage 2. So if you're looking at a super selective school, again, this is why getting hold of the school and making sure that you've got those admissions deadlines and those admissions written down, they will tell you if there's a second stage. And another thing that's, I suppose, just come to mind is do make sure you know when the applications have to be in, because each year, again, we get a couple of people who either email me or message me and say, I've missed the application deadline. Is there anything I can do? And the answer is usually no, because if you've missed it, it's because you haven't had it on your calendar. So do make sure you know exactly when it needs to go in, you know exactly what style it's going to be, you know if there's going to be a first and a second stage, you know where they're going to be sitting it, you know all of those bits. So please do make sure that you have checked and that you are aware, and don't necessarily listen to the mums at the school gate, because actually just go straight to the source. Go and ask the school, look at the local authority. If there's going to be CAF forms, occasionally you hear us talk about that. That's about admissions. So you have to, when you're making a decision for secondary schools, you have to put an order of schools. Again, that has a deadline. And make sure that you're really clued up and you've done all of that research. Okay, we are almost at the end, and I'm just having a look through here. Yep, Julia, I agree. Start that preparation early, and work to narrow it. Yep, Sabra, I agree as well. Definitely important to look at that target school's website admission, and if you don't get it, bring them up and ask them and make sure that it is absolutely clear. Really recently, a couple of schools did change their admissions criteria, and I think it was only a couple of months ago, and I know that they do it. They do change mid-year as well. I think Sheena's had that issue before, and so you do need to keep on top of it. Okay, parent coping tips. So the first thing is, don't compare your preparation to anyone else, and it's something that's so easy to do. We run a group called 11 Plus Journey, and people will come onto the group and will say about what they're doing, and every child is different. You know your own child. Some people will be doing daily revision over summer. Some people will take 2 weeks off. You know how your child works best. You know what preparation they work. If you are uncertain, then by all means ask, but often people will give you different viewpoints, which is really useful, and something that I quite like in the 11 Plus Journey is that often especially tutors, but also parents, will tell you what they've done, but remember, the ultimate decision is you. It's you and your child who are making this application. So therefore you need to do what is right for you. I've just seen a question that comes in here. How much out of school time per week would we recommend for a child currently in year 5 to prepare? I'm currently losing the battle with computer games. Okay, 2 things that I would do. Firstly, I would find something online that I would recommend, I would do daily. So something like Free Rice for vocab, or looking at Bond Online, or looking at Boffa or Atom, and that would be my that would be my fun stuff that I'd be looking at for year 5. So if they've just entered year 5, that would be maybe my way to kind of balance it, really, because ultimately it's about getting them on side as much as it is about pushing them up that hill. And then the other thing that I would do would be to sit down with your child and make a timetable. Get them to buy in. So get them to write it and get them to agree with you what they're going to do. If they've written it, they've decided what's going to happen when, obviously with you steering, then they cannot argue when you say it's 30 minutes, because they are the ones that were involved in writing it. So get them involved. Now, maybe you start with a smaller amount and you say to them, okay, we're going to start with an hour a week, or we're going to start with 2 30-minute sessions a week. And then you get 3, 4 weeks in, you say, okay, right, now we're going to have a re-look, but make sure that they know that that is coming up. So if I were you, Paul, what I would be doing is I would first of all be discussing with my child, right, we're going to have this first month, and we are going to be doing an hour We're going to be doing an hour a week, and half of that, if they're really reluctant, half of that is going to be done online. And after those first 4 weeks, we're going to be reviewing and we're going to be increasing. So they know what's happening in those 4 weeks. And you praise them for those first 4 weeks. Really, really praise them. Isn't it amazing that you're doing this? I can see how much effort you're putting in. Keep going. Isn't it wonderful? Look at what you've achieved. Get to the end of those 4 weeks and then change it. But make sure you've got their buy-in. Okay, Fozia, what is the best approach to identify development points in gaps in knowledge? Oh, really depends. Depends on what age they are. Year 3 and 4, I would be looking at school books as much as I could. I would also be looking at, I'd be looking at, what are they doing at home, looking over their shoulder and seeing, can you see where that's going to be? So if something's coming home from school, and I'm aware that books are currently being restricted by schools, but if you're looking over their shoulder and you can see that time is a really big issue, that would be what I'd be focusing on. And I'd be going through a checklist and I would be ticking off what they know and what they're not so sure on. So all of that is about really looking over their shoulder in the first couple of years. For year 5, start running questions. So something like a 10-minute test by CGP or a Schofield and Sims mental arithmetic will throw up those pieces really, really quickly. So then you can see, okay, right, that is where they're not doing so great. 11 plus textbooks. Yeah, there's a lot. So really, my advice on that for 11 plus textbooks, I'm sorry, whoever's just asked that, you've suddenly popped off my screen. But for 11 plus textbooks, I think as tutors probably have ones that we prefer. I have a bookshelf pretty much just off to this side of me full of them. Some I will use more than others, but they all cover fairly similar stuff. And just as I say, you don't compare your prep with anyone else's, I would get a book, start working through the book, and if the book's too easy, get a different book. But don't worry that you haven't done all the books, because you'll never do all the books. There's still stuff that's new, and I still keep buying stuff that's new to see what happens. But ultimately, they all cover fairly similar stuff. So ones that I particularly like, I love Schofield Sims. I like First Past the Post. Galore Park's great. Galore Park I use a lot for my independent schools. They're a bit more independent focused. I like CGP. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with CGP just as a provider. I get too distracted by the little pictures. But those are all ones that I would use straight away. When it gets to complex, making sure that the super selectives are done. For me, Exam Paper Plus is great. I really, really like Sheena's Cadwell Quests, because that really helps in terms of vocab. I've got some flashcards that work through 11 plus vocab. I have got flashcards that work through Key Stage 2 math. I've basically got most of what the providers do. I've got Rory Story Cubes. I use the Linky Thinks word wheels. I do everything, but I don't do it with every child. So I will pick and choose, and sometimes we'll only ever use a page of a book. Now I can do that because I tutor, so I've got loads of them. But what I would do is I would choose something that goes across. So something like CGP can be great because it gives you lots of chances, lots of 10-minute tests in a book. Schofield and Sims do the same thing, gives you lots of practice. So those would maybe be the ones that I'd be looking at, because just because of the fact that they've got lots of practice. But don't think, oh, this book has more than this book. Really, they're all fairly similar in terms of practice books. There are some that kind of stand out on their own. For example, no one's done another Cadwell Quests, just because it's so unique in the way that it is. A lot of the tutor provided stuff, Linky Thinks, Word Wheels, again, no one's done that type of thing before. So those ones, Rory Story Cubes, again, those things are maybe a little bit different. Those are things that we would bring into a session. We may not read the whole thing, or we may not go through the whole thing, but we'd use it on occasion. Saba says she loses the computer games battle every weekend. Stick a timer on. Just get them to agree to a timer, and then stick it on. Especially if you've got their buy-in, it's just so much easier. Although I do appreciate that I've not actually tried to get, well, I have tried to get students off of computers, but I'm the outside person, so that's a little bit easier. Okay. If something changes, just in terms of getting back to this, if something changes, so you've decided to, this happened this year actually, a lot of people had decided to do group tuition, and then when lockdown hit, a lot of group providers struggled to go online. Some managed it really well, others didn't really manage it so well, and so a lot of people changed what they were doing. Make sure you communicate this to your child and make sure they know why you are doing it. Please manage your stress in front of them. They really take it on. I've been on here before, and I've talked about a student that I used to have who, when it got to the exam, he was so nervous of taking it. And I asked him why, and he told me that he was worried about letting his dad down because his dad had put so much effort into helping him prepare, and he was worried about letting him down. And we had to go back and we had to really, really work at making him realize that he'd done so much preparation and he was so much better than when he'd started, and that it was about the work. But please do try and manage your stress in front of your child. Make sure that you've talked over plan B. So grammar school is not the be all and end all. I know we talk about it a lot here, but there are some outstanding state schools, and there are some outstanding non-selective independent schools. Make sure that your child has seen plan B and that they are on board with plan B as well. Because if they have to go to plan B, you need their buy-in with that as well. So make sure that you have taken them to the state that they will go to. Make sure that they are aware of what's going to happen if they don't get the 11 plus, and that it's not a worse option. It's a different option, because otherwise you add to that stress. Do phone the local authority or the schools. Don't rely on others. Again, I get a number of parents this time each year who tell me, but my friend said, or I heard at the school gate that. Those aren't, they don't set the paper, mums at the school's gates, and your friend may well know what happened 3 years ago, but they don't know what's happening this year, whereas the school does. So do just rely on the school. Do be aware that there's a few official tests, very, very few. So a lot of people, when they're asking about revision materials, they will ask for official revision materials, and official revision materials don't really exist. There is, I know that there's, I've just slipped my mind, I'm hoping maybe Saba can remember, but there is one of the boards that releases some kind of pre-test familiarization type material, or kind of like 4 mock tests, but everything else has been written by tutors. That is not saying it's not official, but also it's very similar to what's looking. People who write those revision materials take a long time to go through the style, to get used to it, and they write some pretty good stuff. Do listen to your child. If they're shy and they're reticent and they are a bit underconfident, sticking them in group tuition may not be the best idea, because they aren't really going to stick their hands up and say if they don't understand something. Likewise, if they've got a one-to-one tutor and they say the tutor isn't listening, or the tutor doesn't understand, or the tutor's doing this, do have a discussion with the tutor or sit in the lesson. Again, if any parent of mine kind of comes to me and says, this is what my child has said, I will talk to the tutor and I will work out why they are doing it. There may be a reason behind it. And if there is, then that's something that can be communicated with the parent. But do listen to your child. You know if what they're saying is correct, you know, when they're telling a fib. But often their response is usually correct. So do listen to them. Sheena, thank you. There we are. DL provides the test for books. Okay, perfect. And don't just rely on tuition. I mean, I'm a tuition provider, but I say to every parent when they start, it's a three-way process. It's my tutor, it's the parent, and it's the child. And that means doing things that you might be set homework by the tutor, you might be doing things outside of lessons, but you are preparing for this together. So don't just put them into a tuition and expect that tutors will deal with everything. Do make sure you're on top of it, that you're looking at what they're doing, that you are talking to them about the tutor, that you are talking to them about what's been happening, and really do get that feedback. Okay, I know that there's a couple of you who are here. Right, let's try and have a look at all these comments. Naomi, hi there. So tips for speeding up time management in year 5. So this is a little bit further on. So kind of past the year 3, past the year 4, into year 5, we're into kind of that last little stretch. So I suppose I wouldn't necessarily count it as preparing. I'd count that more in kind of the exam tips. But if you are in that last stretch, you know, that last year and a bit really, then in terms of preparing for time, get a timer, and let them do something that's maybe 20 minutes and watch them and see how long they take in every single part. So what I do with some of my students, they don't like it, but I will give them 5 questions and I will see when it is that they slow down. And if they slow down to answer a specific question, that tells me they struggle with that question, or that tells me they're getting tired. And I can work out the timings from that. So when we start to move up to 10-minute tests, we will mark halfway, just over, for 5, and they have to reach that point by 5 minutes. And then I can tell where they're starting to slow down. So in terms of time management, in terms of getting them to speed up, that's what I do. In terms of getting them to slow down, which is the other option, it's about checking. It's about coming up with quick ways to check. So if you are doing a sum of 56 plus 24, then get your answer and take away the 24 to get the 56. Make sure that they can easily check and make sure that they know what a sense check is. So again, if you're doing 56 plus 24 and you get 163, something's gone wrong, and you can tell that. So do get those. There we are. Okay. I think I'm almost there. I think hopefully I've answered most people's questions. Again, if I haven't seen it, I will go back and I will have a look over, and hopefully I'll be able to answer. Okay. All right. I think, unless anyone has anything really, really specific, in which case please do pop it down in the thread. So there may be a couple of things that I've not answered. They might be on this kind of questions and where next. How can I find out more? Please ask, because there's a load of experts, and there's a load of experts that are on this this thread. And actually, I know I can see that Sheena's just jumped on. Again, is one of our admins here at the 11 Plus Journey, and again is well, she's taken 2 children through the 11 Plus and is one of our kind of experts. I know that occasionally, and I think this might have happened down here, that some of you have asked for X school. If you're asking about a specific school and you want to know what specific school uses in terms of format or in terms of do they use DLCEM, how do they do it, please contact the school directly. Whilst lots of us do tutor for the specific schools, we don't set the papers and do check with the school. A lot of people ask, what score does my child need? Again, the best score they can get, because scores are standardized according to age, and that age formula is complex, but ultimately you're aiming for the highest score that you can get. And when people come and ask me, what score do I need for a specific school, that is pretty much what I tell them, because whilst 80%, 82%, 85% is great to say. If your child achieves that on the day but everyone else achieves higher, then unfortunately the fact that they achieved the mark that we said you should be aiming for, it may not be high enough to get them in. So it really is just about what they can do. And then where can I find this book or resource? Again, please do ask on the group. Often members, especially around this time, they've got old copies of the books that they're going to be selling, they're going to be handing on. We won't distribute anything that has copyright, that should be purchased, and that's something that you can find. You have to ask to purchase from somebody. So sometimes members do have those old copies and that they are selling and handing on. Perfect. All right. So I hope everybody has had some questions answered. As I said, Sheena is in the thread, as is Saba, and I am going to go and have a look in the thread and see if I can answer any more questions. If you don't get an answer from me this evening, then do just tag me in it, and I'll see if I can come along and answer that specific question for you. So again, thank you very much for listening. As I said at the beginning, my name is Jemma Smith. I am the director of the Education Hotel and one of the admins here on the 11 Plus journey. And thank you very much to Saba, who runs this group, for letting me jump on this evening and talk to you about the start of that 11 Plus. And good luck on your 11 Plus journey. Do use us, and do get in touch for any questions that you have. Thank you very much. Bye bye.